Florida gets another ranked series victory. Mississippi State, I mean, they had this series won, and then Jack Caglione came up to the plate in the bottom of the ninth. It was 3-2, and then he hits a 2-run nuke shot as Florida has now won back-to-back over ranked opponents. So the Florida Gators looking very scary in the SEC East. North Carolina goes into Wake Forest and sweeps the Demon Deacons. So North Carolina, they moved up into the top 10 in today's poll. The Duke Blue Devils, after struggling early on, they get back on track, getting a top 10 victory against Virginia. USC gets the upset victory over number 2 Oregon State. So that's pretty much, your really main series. We'll look at the rankings that came out today. Number 1 is Arkansas. Number 2 is Clemson. They definitely soared up the rankings. Texas A&M is number 3. Tennessee comes in at 4 after a big win at home against Georgia. And then number 5 is Oregon State. How about DBU? Number 8, Dallas Baptist University, 23-4. They're always a dangerous team. And then dropping out of the poll is Kansas State and Oklahoma. But we like to talk about positives. Let's talk about the disappointment. We talked about Wake Forest. We haven't brought up LSU yet on this show. No Bio Bingo Bites as well since Chet's in Houston. No, we're not avoiding talking about getting swept by Arkansas. It is because I don't want to do it by myself. That would just be weird. But LSU dropped all the way to 18. They're 20-9 right now and have yet to win an SEC series. Wake Forest, after starting this season at number 1, they fall all the way to number 21 and 17-10. So I asked a question to you two gentlemen. Who's the bigger disappointment? Keep in mind, Wake Forest was the preseason number 1 team, and LSU was the preseason number 2 team. So this were 2 teams that we saw last year in the College World Series, and now they're not even above 500 in their respective leagues. So wait, who is the bigger disappointment? You could say both. You can take one. Give us your
I'm going to go with LSU, and I know that LSU lost more, but I think all the resources are there for this team to, at a minimum, be a top 5 team in the SEC, and they just haven't shown it yet. I know the SEC is tough. I think we're well beyond the days of 50-game winners in the SEC. I think if you can get the 45 wins in the SEC, you're doing pretty damn good. But for LSU to just not look like the best team on the field and to be losing games because of sloppiness, that's just not on brand. Wake Forest, yeah, they had a lot of talent coming into this season, but they haven't won a championship since the 50s. This just isn't an elite program. They had flash in the pan success last year, but who's to say they were going to be all that this year? But LSU, you expect them to be good year in, year out, and they're just not. So that's why I'm going with LSU.
Jacob, who do you think is the bigger disappointment so far this season?
I'll agree with Wade. I think it is LSU. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense for how poorly they're playing. I mean, I think I would have said Wake Forest if it wasn't for today. LSU's losing to Southern 8-5 right now. I mean, you're losing to a team that is considered nowhere near the best in baseball in the top 25. LSU losing today is going to drop them even further.
I wish they were unranked.
Yeah, and they'll probably.
Honestly, they should be unranked. I just think that if you looked at their SEC schedule so far, it's been all top 10 teams. They open up SEC play with Mississippi State, which you thought at the start of the season was going to be easy. They take 2 out of 3, and then you get Florida. Then you get the number 1 team. You can't even get a win against Arkansas.
The schedule is hard, no doubt, but you got to be able to compete. I mean, if you're LSU.
Oh, yeah, I definitely.
Don't get me wrong. They're 20-9, and you go through slumps. It happens. It's baseball, and it's going to happen to every team in baseball. Arkansas is going to go through a slump this year. It's just a matter of when it is. And the thing is LSU's not going to be good as they were last year. It's reality, and they're not going to be that way for the next couple of years. So I think if that's the case, suck it up, take your medicine, and play the best baseball you can. If you make it, you make it. If you don't, you don't. I think there's better teams in baseball. Arkansas looks like the best team in baseball, and that's why they're number 1. I think it's number 1, it's pitching, and they've found a recipe with it, and I think that's their biggest upside in the SEC is they can go out and shut down any team they want, defensively.
I think if you had to ask me like who I'm more worried for, it's LSU. I think that Wake Forest is just going to be just fine. I think that the ACC is absolutely loaded too.
It's
Like I
wide
mentioned,
open.
Clemson's the top 3 team. Virginia Tech, they're a top 10 team. Like there's so many good teams. I think it's like when you look at the top 8 national seeds, I would not be shocked if like half of them is from the SEC and the ACC. I think that you're going to get at least one Pac-12, probably Oregon State, Dallas Baptist, the way that they're rolling, they'll probably be a top 8 seed. Now I know we're only in April. The selection show's not until May, but looking forward. Doesn't get any easier for both these teams. LSU starts a 3-game series in Fox on Thursday against Vanderbilt. That's been a team that's been up and down. They've been hovering around 500. But they're still a very good baseball team. Wake Forest goes on the road to number 11 Virginia Tech. So both of those teams' schedules doesn't get any easier. LSU will play Vanderbilt and Tennessee, which pretty much closes the door on that absolute gauntlet of a schedule, like Jacob mentioned, brought up. Losing to Southern, not a great really thing that you want to do, because that would be like their 5th straight loss in a row. And you got to at least get at least one win to feel something good, because to lose against Southern and you got Vanderbilt coming into your town, if you don't win that series alone, your postseason hopes are pretty much dashed. And the curse of the national champion, we saw Ole Miss, Mississippi State. We saw them win the national championship, and the next year after that, they didn't even make it to Hoover. So that trend is that dark cloud trend is definitely hovering over LSU's name. So we'll see if both teams turn around. If you had to ask like a question, who's going to turn around eventually, I would say Wake Forest, just because like I mentioned, the ACC, it's definitely a top heavy conference, but I think that Wake Forest is going to get it together.